Hello students, this is Ms. Espinosa, and this video is your first lesson, first day, and it's just about polynomial basics. What are polynomials, what are the shapes of their graphs, and what is their end behavior? And if you don't know what end behavior means, don't worry, we're going to cover that in this video. So you should have a worksheet that looks like this. Please do make sure you fill this out. It's due with this lesson. It's not considered complete until you turn in your notes and pass the quiz. So let's go ahead and get started. What is a polynomial? What do they look like? Written out as an equation and then graphed in a picture. What is a polynomial? Well, the polynomial is just an expression that has numbers, letters, and it could have powers as well. So the degree of the polynomial is simply the exponent, and it's the leader. So the one that is the highest, and usually it's in the front. So for example, here, this is an exponent of 2, this is an exponent of 3, so the degree would be the 3 because it's bigger. It's the biggest exponent there is. We also like to talk about polynomials in terms of how many terms there are. Another word for terms that might be easier for you to understand is pieces. This polynomial has 4 pieces, 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. So we call this a polynomial. What separates your pieces is the minus signs and the plus signs. That's what separates them. So what's not a polynomial? Anything that has a fraction with x's or letters in it is not a polynomial. So here, the x is on the bottom. So that's not a polynomial. The x has to be up in a regular number. It can't be a fraction, can't be on the bottom of a fraction. So all of these are fine because the letters are not in fractions. Okay, so this is not a polynomial. And then this one is not a polynomial because the power is negative. You're not allowed to have a negative exponent. Notice over here, all of these guys were positive. Okay, so these are polynomials. And you might say, well, this piece doesn't even have a power. It does. It's an invisible 1. Okay, so it could be a 1. It could even be a 0. This one doesn't even have an x, and that's okay. It's like x to the 0 power. You could think of it that way. But of course, you're not going to see x to the 0 power. You just won't see an x. And that's okay too. You're just not allowed to have a negative exponent. That's the only thing you're not allowed to have. And of course, then it can't be in the bottom of a fraction. So please write this down on your worksheet. Question number 1 was, what is a polynomial? Please write about it in your own words. If you need to pause this video, please do so. Now, there are many names for polynomials. Mathematicians like to talk about how many pieces there are. So this first one we call a monomial. Mono means 1. So this is 1 piece. We call it a monomial. It could have had a power of 2 or 3 or any power here. Just so you know, that doesn't matter. This is all one chunk. A binomial, bi means 2, like bicycle, right? 2 wheels. Well, a binomial means there's 2 pieces in your polynomial. So you have a first piece, and then you have your second piece. There's 2 pieces here. Trinomial, like tricycle, 3. Tri means 3. So this polynomial has 3 pieces. Your first piece here, second piece here, and your third piece here. Notice that it could have x's and y's. It could have any letter. Okay, so that doesn't matter. After 3 pieces, they stop calling it stuff. They just call it a polynomial. A polynomial is more than 3 pieces. It could be 4 pieces, it could be 5 pieces, it could be 6. Everything else is just called a polynomial. All right, please make sure you answer that question on your worksheet. You should be done with numbers 1, 2, and 3 by now. If not, please make sure you watch this video or just go back and get the pieces that you missed. Let's move on. So what do the graphs look like? You know what a polynomial looks like. It has the numbers and letters and powers, exponents. But what is the picture if you graph it out? What does it look like? Well, in this lesson, you're going to learn the shape of the graph. Most of them will have this U shape, but it does get a little crazy. Some polynomials have the U shape, but in the middle here in the dip, it might go up, down, up, down, up, down, and then it goes back up again. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. When is it a nice U shape? And when does it get crazy down here before it starts going up again? And sometimes these U shapes aren't even up, they're down. We'll talk about that as well. Another type of shape you'll see in this lesson is this S shape. I'm not quite sure what to call it. I call it like the switch direction shape, right? First this was going down, but then it went up. So it switched directions. Again, this is the general shape, but sometimes crazy stuff happens in the middle here. It might go up and down, up and down, up and down before it goes up again. So these are the two main shapes you're going to learn about in this lesson. We're going to talk about when it goes upwards. So of course you could guess that if it's going up, it's positive. And if this is flipped upside down, like going down, that means it's negative. So we'll talk about that. X-intercepts, and where does it cross the x-axis? So it's very important where it crosses the x-axis. We will talk about that, but it'll have to be another video because that's a long conversation. But we will definitely talk about that in the future. So what you need to know is that there's even degrees and odd degrees. So if it's an even number, like 2, 4, 6, 8, so that power, right, the exponent, the degree. If it's even, like 2, 4, 6, 8, then the graph is going to pretty much have this kind of a shape where it's pointing up and then the other side points up as well. So the two sides agree. They're both pointing the same way. This one is x squared minus 4. Now I want you to just notice that it could say y equals x squared minus 4. Or sometimes worksheets and quizzes, instead of a y, they put f of x. That's just function notation. It's the same thing as having y equals. So don't let that confuse you. I'll use both in this video. So x squared. So the squared gave it this U shape. And another thing I want you to know is if you ever have a number at the end that doesn't have an x, that's your y-intercept. So I just made it up that it's -4. So I'm pretending that this is like -1, -2, -3, -4. So I'm pretending that this graph crossed at -4, and that's why I stuck a -4 back here, the y-intercept. Okay, so again, all even exponents, 2, 4, 6, 8, if the degree is even, that means the leader is even, then you will have a U shape that looks like this. If it's odd, it's a different shape. Okay, so odd, of course, is like 3, 5, 7, 9. If this leading degree exponent is odd, then the shape will be like this S shape. Notice that this was pointing downwards, and then it switched directions in the middle here, and it's pointing upwards. So these two guys will always point in opposite directions. So again, you'll have this kind of shape if it's odd, like a 3 or a 5 or a 7. So this is very new for a lot of us. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the even degrees for a little while, and then I'll come back to the odd degrees after I'm done. So let's focus on these even degrees and make sure you're filling out your worksheet as we go.